areas the way if population don't go down, you can reduce the number of seats. In other areas, population don't go up, you can increase the number of seats. So that I don't explain the basic principle. So this PR system,
Okay.
how did,
May I
how
interrupt
did
you? May I interrupt you, Mr. Mangot?
yeah,
Because,
yeah,
for example, this section 38 where you reference,
yeah.
where it has to do with, if I understand it correctly, with the changing or modification of the uh, of the constitution without a referendum. Is that what section 38? Are you referring to section 38 of the constitution? We say section
Section
38 now.
38 already exists. The
Okay.
one where then the addition to section 30 is section 38A, which
A
is a
38A.
constitutional. Yeah, 36. Yeah.
Okay.
So then they,
All right.
do them by a
If,
constitutional instrument, and
well,
you not
if I
need.
may comment, okay.
Go ahead,
Because
Mr. John.
I would just want to ask you a question. This
Yeah.
constitutional instrument of section 38A,
Yeah.
procedurally, with a constitution, I don't know if you go amend the constitution by constitutional instrument, but I just want you to take on that. You think the proper procedure that one day, or all clauses, it seems to me, should be entrenched in the constitution, and if we now amend
Well,
any area of the constitution, it would seem to me that it has to go through parliament. Because I think all sections, whatever is in the constitution, should be entrenched. So there should not be additional instruments to the constitution without a referendum. What would be your take on that?
okay, that is where we get problem with the constitution. Normally, in countries, them, as you rightfully say, all clauses in the constitution should be entrenched clause. So if you want to change them, you need a referendum. But we have our own
Correct.
system where you have system entrenched clause. So if you want to change them, you get to put a constitutional instrument to parliament. And when you put that constitutional instrument into parliament, it can only be approved by a 2/3 majority. So when they added section 38A, there was no dissent in 2001. So it was approved by a 2/3 majority. But there the problem lies. I'll tell you why the problem lies. Because it was done to legalize it at the time, which they may not do in 1996. But now we get 38, we talk about one member, one constituency. Then we get 38A, we talk about the district block voting system. And I remind we listeners, after 2001, we not ever use section 38A. Because 2007, we go back to section 38, one member, one constituency. 2012, we went back to section 38, one member, one constituency. 2018, we go back to section 38, one member, one constituency. So how did this come about in this time? I can give the background. Before, we start with the midterm election, midterm census. At the time where the government do the midterm census, because even at that law, normally we do census every 10 years. But also, government can do a 5-year census. But for do that 5-year census day, he get to explain why he want to do the 5-year census. So when they were doing the midterm census, the original reason they gave us was to say, okay, we be not get COVID, right? Then we also get the National Development Plan, the 5-year plan. So we want to do census to aid those two processes. There were some other objectors to that. People will be very suspicious because the first thing that we ever do on a Salone. And say, not to say, I use this census for election purpose. They say, no, But then again, now go back to the statutory instrument. Now they the first first kind of parliament. And that thing not be all inside the well of parliament. Now been Bitumani or somewhere. Bitumani Hall. So when they go past that statutory instrument day for the census, again, the opposition, they not been agree. So Kuskas been kind of effect. Now the first thing I knew effect. And why the effect? Because the law will deal with statutory instruments. You get a law. Then an act which was passed under the APC government, the time of President Momo Binde, and the speaker, the clerk at the time was Mr. J.A. Carpenter. So the law that deals with statutory instruments, it says for bringing a statutory instrument, first of all, consultation. Look at that word, consultation. It means in order for contact all the people or institutions were affected, either in the good way or the bad way. Secondly, you get for gazette them the day before you bring that statutory instrument to Parliament, or the same day. So that time when we do the one for the census, when they bring the statutory instrument to Parliament, the opposition not being agreed. Because why? Now the way we will draft the law. Because with the statutory instrument, once you lay on a table, now make sure it's at the table of Parliament, it could be followed by a debate, then go discussion. But for amend them or overturn them, now the onus is on the one we know. Take down the critical. That's the critical issue. The one we don't want now Inge forget 2/3 majority, not to the one where they present them. So I think say when they draft them, at the time where they want to retain the power of executive. So when you bring them, you know say the other side will get 2/3 majority. And once you don't lay that instrument there, and it takes 21 days, it becomes a law. So now that system they use for introduce the census. Now that makes so the opposition may fetch let them not put that statutory instrument there. Because once you lay the instrument, you can debate until cows come home. But if the one that will object to that law not get 2/3 majority, they're not going to be able to change them. So that
Okay,
is the
now
issue.
under whose political party or which government then passed the law day, we
It was
the
it did two sides. Yeah. It did now an act, the Statutory Instrument Act, that was passed under APC during the
which,
Momo term.
which government? Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah, during Momo term. Because at that time the clerk of parliament was J.A. Carpenter. That statutory instrument was passed even before we come after the other elections. So it did not exist. But then also you get the standing order. What's in a standing order? Standing order are the rules and procedures of parliament. And that is covered under section 94 Constitution. Subject to the provision of the Constitution, the parliament can make regulation on its own procedure from time to time. So we get a statutory instrument, and then we get a standing order. Standing order now determine how parliament they work. Because, for instance, one of the things I will refer to, in that same standing order, it tells an MP when for talk. Because if you not catch the speaker here, you not go talk. You also talk about unparliamentary language. Like say you tell you come say you're a thief man or you're a layman, then go say now on parliamentary language, you get for either apologize or withdraw that statement. If you not do that, the speaker can send you out of the house. Right? Certain things they do now, we don't deal with the civil parliament. Remember the parliament and they use their mobile phone. It is not supposed to happen. It's under the standing orders. So SO18, as they can call it, 9 deal with statutory instruments together with the act. So those are the standing orders and those are the rules of parliament. And whenever parliament is sitting, first, the sergeant of arms walks into parliament, follow the speaker and lay the maze. But as long as MPs are seated, the authority rests on the speaker, not in the referee.
All right. Mr. Mangot, if just hold your thought for further statement day, make her ask the control room, let them play the recent events in the parliament, the commotion will take place. And then you explain some of the procedures, what ought not to have been done, and what should have been done. By whom, if you don't mind. So if I can ask the control room for just play the commotion which take place in the parliament, so we can educate, Mr. Mangot can help for educate we and the rest of the public as to we can put we on description or adjectives in terms of characterizing the conduct of we parliamentarians them. But it seems like where Mr. Mangot is heading, a substantial number of parliamentarians do not understand the rules, starting from the speaker himself all the way down, and of course the clerk, who has assumed extraordinary power that was not given to him, but by either incompetence or abdication of the speaker in your own role, the clerk do adopt power we not get. So control room, can you play them for at least this video? Make we
the parliamentarian right now. You see right now the APC are in the start. You see.
This is going to be the first time police officers will be deployed in the well to ensure that safety goes on. So make sure you turn on this area and make sure people do not disrupt the city. If anybody disrupts the city, by the standing orders of Parliament, that person should be outside the well. Okay? So you can get your men to turn on this area so that city will come. Please do it quickly. We have only covered this section of the well to ensure that cities go on. However, if you are still noisy, the noisy MPs will be taken out. The noisy MPs will be taken out. We have only covered. Hello, officers. Delta one. It may seem we are not getting control.
All right. One more thing I go want before Mr. Mango start for talk. The gentleman who keeps giving the command, take them out, take them out. I want the audience for no say, not to the Speaker of the House, who maybe has been granted such authority. This is a clerk who has zero authority to issue such orders. I stand corrected, Mr. Mangot, when you begin to make your comment. But it seems to me, even the speaker, either I don't abdicate in role or in unknowing role, and then the clerk don't assume role where the constitution, nor the rules, nor the standing orders game, where it demonstrate. Then you see where parliamentarians who should have almost absolute immunity because they are within the House of Parliament have been manhandled. So this is the level to which we political system has degenerated. So I would like for let give a comment on that. But also we get for talk about the police. We will play a video where we get the Kenya president. They talk because we need for to look at other African countries and see how they conduct themselves, how they progress. And the reason why the Kenya president in comment need for be mentioned, Kenya was a country where we don't get independence. Now we better go and help them and try for show them how to run things. This again just show you how far back would have fall. Now we not seem to know anything anymore. Everything that we now other people and they do a better pathway. So Mr. Mengot, so just for you for resume your earlier explanation, sir. I want to make you show me some of the irregularities them of which you just that video did just illustrate.
Okay, for let people able to understand, because in Parliament we get roles and responsibilities, and their roles and responsibilities then it also apply to areas in Parliament and certain people. For a start, once you don't get the procession in the morning or before Parliament starts, now that makes sure you get the speaker being followed by the clerk and the sergeant at arms. Lord, take them 3 people in there because the sergeant at arms they hold the mace. The mace now are the symbol of authority. Number 1, the speaker, once he's on seat, he is responsible for the conduct of the meeting. When they don't call the house to order, of course, people will say sometimes Leone assume because some of the report that were hearing, they say the speaker attack us until he was in case. But the law say, or parliamentary procedure say, when they bring this statutory instrument to Parliament, if the speaker, now just like when they play football, if you see some man foul, you want behave, now the referee they caution them. Or like when they want get a brawl, you go see the referee separate them, he give a red card. So at that time, when the speaker realized that this is going to be a tension, it is within his powers for adjourn Parliament temporarily. And so he can go to the chambers, go to so many times, go talk to the leaders of the different political as to how they. So the speaker now in charge. The clerk is there as an administrator, right? In the day for actually take records of proceedings. So the first mistake was when the speaker realized there was tension, he did not use his power to adjourn Parliament. Because people get for misbehave, adjourn Parliament and call the sergeant at arms for security, for let members move out quietly, let tensions. But he didn't do that. And then, what was the fracas? The other side knew the first thing when they go for now the mace. Because if you remove the mace, it means there's no symbol of authority. Then number 1. Number 2, they realize if they lay their instrument in Parliament, once they don't lay them, they don't record them. If they follow that 21 days rule. And there's no way they were going to have a 2/3 majority to overturn it. So that's the second point. But then the other point where I get for make way people in the comments from the report, they say now attack Parliament. If you look at that floor verse, where according to the estimate where the speaker, the clerk do in the report, then 2 floor verse, they estimate them value at $2,000. 35 million old Leones. So if you watch the video, it was sent from one side, the opposition side. Then the same missile was sent from the ruling party side to the opposition side. So if they send an attack, now like what in a school where they say 2 fighting one another. And if you listen, the Mami course, they come up from both sides. You understand? So there were that missile. So you cannot blame one and left the other. Then are the thing. So one, the speaker was incapacitated, but he should have stopped. 2, the sergeant at arms, when I responsible for security, he can call for backup. But then you can see from the video, the clerk 9 take full in charge. So he not only usurped the speaker in position, he also usurped the sergeant at arms in position. Take them out, take them out, take them out. Then the next way, very important, in Parliament, members who are not members of Parliament are called strangers, right? Now the British system, now makes sure where you go Parliament, for go list you then at the gallery, then call strangers. And the British get a system whereby if people end in at the gallery, it just take 1 or 2 MPs to say, I spy strangers. If they say, I spy strangers, that means when they want to discuss things of interest, where they don't want other person for Yeri, so they can clear the gallery. So if you bring Delta Force inside, you pull the other MPs then, forcefully, then cordon Usa in one lay the instrument. That particular laying of instrument is unconstitutional because you cannot lay an instrument when you have strangers in the well of the house. And those strangers in the well of the house are the police guys. They could have called the police. Yes, I have no problem them calling the police. They should have called the police to come and help the sergeant at arms to bring sanity in the house. And that should have been it, an adjournment. But you know, call police for cordon the house and carry out parliamentary proceedings. That is against parliamentary procedures. That now be the description of all which happened at that time and the roles of the different people. And I stand corrected, and I talk from the point of view understanding rules and procedures in the British Parliament, which is the same rules and procedures we are using. So not for saying a different thing, now the same rules and procedures. Mr. Shillon, you're mute. I can't hear you.
So I'm sorry. So in that respect, you said the clerk usurped the speaker in power. So in that respect, the order to remove the other parliamentarians from or by the clerk were illegitimate or illegal. He didn't have any such power. Am I right?
To have order against parliamentary rules and procedure. Now make sure the clerk get deputy. If the clerk was incapacitated, what he would have done was to adjourn the meeting, and if you're able to carry on, get in deputy for continue. The speaker is not a deputy, the clerk is not a deputy speaker. He doesn't have that role for direct proceedings. And I stand corrected and I stand by what I'm saying.
In that instance, what role will the sergeant at arms had in that situation?
The sergeant at arms, he gets in them, now he's responsible for security of parliament. But under the situation, I will see the fracas, given the parliamentary security, they should not, they not be able to quell the situation. Yes, let's get that clear because they are
Okay.
very thin. What should have been done is to have adjourned the meeting, not actually bringing police to cordon the area for the instrument to be laid. That is the situation. Because if they adjourn meeting, first no day, because once they adjourn the meeting, then the laying of the statutory instrument would not have taken place. And let I make it clear, there were two statutory instruments, right? Let people understand.
Yeah.
The one, when at the district block system for MPs, you can argue that it's already in the law, right? That is under
Yeah.
38A. That you can use a statutory instrument for, where, according to present law, the opposition, I forget, 2/3 majority. But the other one is a constitutional instrument. And for a constitutional instrument, the proposer, which is the government bench, now don't forget 2/3 majority for the two instruments.
Well, so don't you see so many fundamental flaws? One, in the drafting of the Constitution itself, in terms of the manner in which, like I said earlier, that any changes in the Constitution or any clause in the Constitution should be entrenched. That and the only way for make changes should be by referendum, instead of trying to get the statutory instruments the way can be done by some parliamentary procedure. And two, you also
Alex,
don't tell me.
I will explain
Go
three
ahead.
things. You have three guiding principles. Yeah?
Yeah.
Number one, you have the act talking about how you present statutory instruments. Number two, you get the Constitution. We also talk about Section 38 and Section 38A. Then number three, you get the standing orders when I deal with the rules and proceedings of Parliament and behavior of MP. But let me put this in context now, right? You're a lawyer, Mr. Shillon, and you could tell me which I want to talk about, thing like to deal with precedents and all the rest of it, right? Let's put it into context. When was this PR first talked about in Parliament? It was talked about during the elections bill, when they present an elections bill. And it was in that bill, together with the use of the national identification number as a mandate for register as a voter. They debated it over a long period of time. Now, when the speaker was making his ruling for that statute for the proportional representation, right? He said if they put an elections bill, it would be against the dictates of the Constitution. So that is why they kicked it out at that time. But he had in his judgment, and that's why I put the blame entirely on him. He said that he himself, in according to the recording, he said, according to our Constitution, anybody flouts the Constitution willingly or knowingly or unknowingly is treason.
Well,
He made it point, and he made it to both sides of the House. In that bill, it not only goes against the Constitution, but for let it go pass, we'll need two majority. And both sides agreed that they could not get 2/3 majority. So it was expunged from the bill. It was kicked out. But there where the problem coming. The problem coming when the speaker gave his ruling. His ruling was that proportional representation is already in our law under Section 38A. And the president, after consultation with the electoral commissioner, can make a declaration for it to be used. Let me repeat them. The president, after consultation with the electoral commissioner, can make a declaration for it to be used. Where he failed in his duty was to explain to members the conditions under which you can use Section 38(1), where there is no existing constituency. We already have constituency where MP then they, right? 2,
Yeah.
we do not get census data for population. We already have 2. We have the 2015 in do where they agree. Then we get the midterm census. So you cannot say we not get data for population. And secondly, you cannot say we not get constituency. And thirdly, the other condition is when they don't announce the date for election. So it was the duty of the speaker to qualify and explain to members the conditions under which proportional representation could be used. Fast forward, what happened? The first thing, which is what our government is doing wrongly, is that when they want to make serious announcements, they do it on Twitter. The first time we heard about it, it was the Electoral Commissioner tweeting that after consultation with it, he's going to introduce proportional representation. That was how it started. And then let me show you another thing where it's on procedural. Because for introduce that, it affects the voters and a new system where people are not used since 2002. So what they said at the time was to have given the MPs time to go to their constituency and explain to their people why the change, the reason for the change, and for consult widely. As part of that process, a motion was moved in Parliament by Dr. Kanda Yumkola to look, because he is the chairman of the Political Affairs Committee, because each ministry, because you get the Minister of Political Affairs really under the presidency, you have a committee that shadows him. So he moved that motion, and that motion was seconded by the chief whip of the APC party, which is Hassan Sise. So when that motion was moved, granted by the speaker, there's an ongoing committee inquiry into the PR system. And they should have waited until that committee inquiry has finished, taken evidence, submitted his report, before you can introduce the. So you cannot get one session in Parliament investigating on something they have not finished, and then you bring something like that. So you can see the whole confusion.
Okay, may I just make one or two announcements? Hello, folks. Listeners, the lines are open. In case we get any question we want to ask, please feel free to call in or send in your comments. The lines are open. So please call in and send in your comments. To start with, let me just take one call to start with and see what in the caller get in mind, and then we will continue. Hello, caller. What is your name and who's you call from?
Yeah, Mina Abdullah, the call from Maryland.
Hello, Abdullah. Welcome.
Yeah. The issue very sensitive. I'll try for do due diligence too. So I mean, I go ask a question at the end. I can always don't say this 1991 Constitution. There are so many lacunas, and each time when one party they come to power, they use them to your own advantage. I always don't say the 1991 Constitution. There are most of the vestiges of the 1978 one-party Constitution. This issue about this proportional representation, it is just mistrust, suspicion from the opposition, and that you will understand that from the opposition your point of view that the ruling government will use them because it will be at their own advantage. However, be that as it may, I just want to highlight just a little correction. Waiting Mr. Mengot says about he writes about what he talk about the constitutional and statutory instrument, but the act then it passed in 1999 and I didn't Kabaya in regime. He signed on the 14th day of September 1999. He writes, yes, Sabin J. A. Carpenter and the clerk of parliament. But the question I get from Mr. Mengos is,
Mango.
you try for distinguish constitutional instrument and statutory instrument. And I would like to go over that again. Then, if them present a statutory instrument, then table them by the house. Is it always them for hang head before them discuss them, or then table them at the parliament, then deliberate on them, then will reach a consensus for agree within the inside and disagree within another one? So that's a question that's on my head for you, sir.
Okay, sir.
If I may,
thank you very much for your.
Mr. Mangold, hold your thought.
Sure.
Along that same line, there, let me just add, because you better explain to me in the beginning that we get a combination of two systems with current governmental structure. That we get the British system when it comes to parliamentary, then when it comes to the executive pattern, we get the American system, in the sense that we have what we style as Republican Constitution, which to me has no meaning, the word Republican, because that was a creation by Shaka Stevens for just wanting to get rid of the independent constitution where we give a governor general and a prime minister, because he wanted to have executive power, what you describe as a supreme presidency. So the problem with that, I still take the position, and I think this is what we're struggling with back home, because we have a combination of systems that may not be in sync with each other, in the sense that, for all I know, a constitution, if it exists in a country, is the supreme law of the land. Parliament does not have any authority to pass any law. So we talk about then instrument here. Any law where you abridge the constitution, Parliament doesn't have any such authority. Parliament doesn't have absolute power, because in a constitutional government, the constitution is the supreme law of the land. The trouble we get in Sierra Leone, we are still trying to find our way into this constitutional maneuvering, which we still don't seem to understand, because we still operate as if Parliament is the be-all and end-all of all legislations then in the country. But it doesn't work that way. Which leads me to the other question. With the struggle with this 1991 constitution and all this kind of thing, we know saying a very learned coach, learned man them write the constitutions. But my other exception or arguments to this or objection to this 1991 constitution is that it was not written by people competent enough to write a constitution. And I want to be corrected. Let them tell me anybody will be part of this 1991 constitution who had ever taken a course in constitutional law, or who was a constitutional scholar, or who has sat and decided and presided over constitutional cases. I am willing to bet none. We just give constitution for be written to certain intellectuals who probably possess degrees from Cambridge and Oxford, who I will contend were not competent to write such a serious instrument for a country. So I rest my case. I am challenging the intellectuals there now, the Oxford, the Cambridge, the Speaker of the House, the Dr. Abdullah Conte them, let them dispute what you have to say. Because this is where the problem lies. We need to go back and work our way back and get people, and we get specialization in constitutional law, because it is very important. This is supposed to be the law of the land, but we see where Parliament, they interfere with the simple operation of the system itself or the constitution itself. Then there's one other observation. All this discussion, a very vital part of a governmental structure when the judiciary seems to be non-existent in all this fight, because when the parliamentarians in effect so, the courts will have be involved. There should be process and procedures whereby this thing should be taken to court, argued by competent constitutional lawyers, not just lawyers, people who know what constitution is and come up with constitutional interpretation of certain clauses. So the judiciary is absent in all this struggle. We're just left and between opposition members in parliament, the fight they go on, then we'll get a group of citizens, then we'll argue. So please, Mr. Meng. So please, Mr. Mengot, I'd like to get your comment. I'm sorry, I don't know why. Okay. Yeah.
Because I'm not hearing you from this side.
Okay, make I ask the control. Let me ask the control room for please.
Yeah, because on all the systems.
This is the Central University. Here, we move a little differently. We are the change makers, the innovators. We are solving the problems of the 21st century. We create, we lead, we inspire. Beginning your journey at Central University is opening your chapter to success. Here, we are a family that works together to make the change today for a better Sierra Leone and world tomorrow. Here is a home for you. Central University, a place where careers begin.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so what you have to say just now, based upon what you hear, Mr. Mangot the Tewi, there are so many flaws in the system, and we do the country a great disservice because we not seem for the follow rules. We seem every political party with kind of power seem for us to do things as they please. They no one forget experts. A man like Mr. Mangot, for example, this man is what we ordinarily will refer to as experts. As an expert, we know which they talk about, we for being instrumental in being consulted in many instances for make sure we run things right. Now, if you listen to what they say, some of the problem now start with the current government. The current government does use some of the bad laws. The current government does use some of the bad laws we passed by the other party. So Mr. Mangot is back. Let we go to Ram. I'll go with all any further comments I get. Mr. Mangot, I don't know how much of what I be say you hear, sir. But whatever.
But let me ask caller. And first of all, I must say thank you to for the correction we make. Yes, indeed, the Statutory Instrument Act was 1999 under Mr. Carpenter, and that was during the Kaba government. So probably I'm very happy that he actually made that correction. I was thinking otherwise. So in effect, the Statutory Instrument Act precede the constitutional amendment in 2001, which is the one the one we bring section 38A. The other question we asked, I can't recall. If you can remind me, I can able to explain it to him. Or we continue with your comment you made, Mr. Shillon.
Okay, yeah, I don't know how much of me comment the way you make, way you but I does to talk about the problems they all get with respect to the current system as it is, because when you begin for talk, we say we'll get a combination of the British and the American system. On the executive side, we'll get what you call supreme presidency, whereas the power lies in the hands of the executive when at the president. whereas at the British system, you had a political party where they choose them, leader. So the British are able to change prime ministers not as a means of, or not through general election, but then system set up in such a way that they can change party leadership at any time they feel like it. So that said, I was saying, so you can see why would they struggle with this constitutional problem still. Because number one, we get a constitution that was written by a group of people who, to my knowledge, are not familiar with constitutional issues. They've never argued constitutional cases. They've never taken courses in constitutional law. They've never written constitutional treaties. And yet, these people are supposed to be the authors of a constitution we will still struggle with. And two, they argue, say, you cannot change a constitution by a parliamentary instrument, because every clause in the constitution should be entrenched. It should not be part of it should not be subject to parliamentary procedure. And thirdly, that parliament is not the supreme law. The constitution is the supreme law, which subject we also to the system whereby that's what parliament normally make law. Even the courts can make law, because when the courts give a decision, that becomes the law of the land. So I've just comment on 19 for let we understand why we get to do so much work. That said, Mr. Mangot, if you all your view, make I take one more call just to make sure, say, callers, they're on the line too long. Then you can go ahead and answer for Wisa. Hello, caller. What's your name and where you call from? Hello, caller.
Yeah, this is Abdul again.
Okay, Abdul. Yeah. You hear Mr. Mangot? Yeah, you hearing comments concerning the question or the correction where you make, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
The question I say, after they don't table a constitutional instrument or a statutory instrument in Parliament, during the deliberation, is it liable to amendments? They can amend anything inside it, or how then lay them after the 21 days? If they don't get the 2/3 majority for throw and out, now so it will become law back. Now the question that I ask.
Okay, in responding to that, yeah.
Or you can just left or you can just left so even when they deliberate them, there should be no amendments to it. After the 21 days, if they not get the 2/3 majority, then it will become law.
Yeah, what you mean now, so that they happen. 21 days without objection, it becomes law. But Mr. Mangot,
let me make a clarification for Mr. Abdul. You get a constitutional instrument when are the two way they put. The constitutional instrument where they put, then I for deal with local government, right? Because 38A not cover local government, it not cover presidential election, it not cover independent. So that constitutional amendment, they for use the block voting system, proportional representation for local government, that constitutional instrument there, if it's debated for the government for see and through, then get 2/3 majority approval. Lord, get that clear. But the other statutory instruments where they use for refer to 38A, we deal with MPs then. The statutory instrument, if they debate them, for either amend them or rescind them, the opposition get a 2/3 majority. If they don't get a 2/3 majority, then it's laid in parliament for 21 days, it becomes law. Now the reason that I make the opposition be effect for letting not lay in parliament, because they know say if they lay in parliament, however much they debate them, they not go get a 2/3 majority for rescind them, and it will become law. Now the clarification that.
And if I may add to that, just by way of observation, not by as it is now, that of itself, that structure there is flawed. It should not be set up in that way. The two-third majority shouldn't come from Congress or from Parliament. It should come from the people. They should put it in a referendum because this is the Constitution. We're not left in the hands of politicians, them, who can be easily bribed to get certain legislations and pass. Like where the president, where Parliament give break to parliamentarians, them for go and explain to them people. Their explanation therefore go tell on the people what in a referendum is all about and why we get for follow the procedures as it is. But what they do now, then left in the hands of parliamentarians, forget two-thirds majority, when we know very well say our system is such that you can easily bribe parliamentarians them and get the two-thirds where you want. And that's a disservice to the country. Now, I know say such laws were written by the learned men them for giving you political advantage to the new political party. But you cannot write the constitution for give advantage or undue advantage of one party over another. What we know say the obvious victim of such a law is going to be the country. So the procedure itself is flawed, and I think say them for that are some of the corrections they would need for make panel system. So, and I think also the way you attack that, I think lawyers should start challenging Parliament's authority to even make such laws. They should take it to court, keep the judges busy. And if the judges are trained in interpretation of constitution and constitutional law, they will strike some of them acts that they or legislations them simply as being unconstitutional, plain and simple. So it's time for begin for take things more seriously, not just left everything in the hand and take away the possibility of bribery, where we know say it's a common practice in our country. So I just want to make that comment, Mr. Mangot, and then for Abdul, where they asked the question, procedurally, I'd even attacked the procedure and structure as it is, as being unconstitutional. I think it should be challenged. The court should be made busy. The court it should be brought to court, and all the issues there we will talk about. That's what Constitution is all about. You know, instead of the parliamentarians in the Fed, get lawyers that will train, and if we not get the well-trained lawyers, then we'll not hire lawyers overseas. You know, because this is for the good of the country. It's worth every penny. You know, because and challenge the legality of such an act. So this Section 38A, Section 38, whether these acts are in fact legal, you know. So for right now, some of my comment on the Mr. Mengot, I don't know if you get anything for add or disagree, but this is not just my own personal observation as we talk.
You are completely right, because when they look at things, as some involved in reviewing laws and to make laws, even in law, you know, when there's a law, you have the spirit and form of the law. It's definitely. So let's go back to the original intention of the 1991 Constitution, because there has been 3 attempts to review it. The first was the MPRC, when they had that commission, and Tijan Kaba, the late president, was heading that committee. They made a recommendation to the MPRC government. The MPRC government did not do anything about it. The second one, which is more comprehensive, was under Justice Kawan, who was a former speaker during the Ernest Kuruma government, right? And they didn't accept it. The third attempt was under this government. But when the government do their review, when they say they want to do the instrument, that's where the problem comes in. All the people who were involved were people who are government people. So then they say, okay, because of the way our constitution is styled, they say, okay, we can cherry pick and take the one they wanted to entrench clause and wait for the other one. When I entrench clause, they'll go referendum. I give an example. One of the one change when I entrenched clause, I had a program on that. Was when they first started they brought the one for the Local Government Act, where they wanted to review, where they said, now for be a mayor or chairperson, you get for get for be a ward councillor, you get for be somebody who get a secondary school certificate. Then thirdly, they want to remove political party away from standing as local government councillors or mayor. It was widely debated. I did a program with two people who knew about the Local Government Act. Jonathan Sandy, one of my colleagues I worked with in Kenya, was deputy head of ONS. And at the time, look at that Local Government Act, he was working for UNDP. And Dr. Bernadette Lahai. So we pointed out that that is an entrenched clause. You cannot change it by an act of parliament unless you go through a referendum. So that was why it was dropped. And we also recommended that rather than cherry picking the constitutional amendment, let's do a root and branch review of the constitution through a referendum. That was what Kenya did. If people want, I can share them, the Kenya experience. But there are three fundamental flaws in the constitution, apart from all that, which it's not fair to the people. Number one, the fact that somebody can stand as an independent for MP, for councillor, but he cannot stand as an independent for president. That's it. You can only stand for president if you carry a party symbol.
Makes no sense. Makes no sense.
The second part, which I have a bone to pick with, it's in section 77F. And then they come under representation of the people. So if, for instance, you are voted by your people, albeit
exactly.
You have a party symbol, yeah? And then the party can write to the speaker and say, you've been accused of anti-party activity. Then you automatically lose your seat. Not so the party votes for you. Now the people then vote for you.
Precisely.
That means you're taking the power of the people and putting it on the party.
May I interrupt you, sir? Let me interrupt you. Just hold your thought. This is what I've been arguing, that the Local Government Act itself is unconstitutional because it not only usurp the mayor and the city council in power, it also take away the council members in power. Because I mean, when you look at the proper governmental structure, city council is a government in its own right, with a head as the mayor, you know. So you cannot get an act whereby that you pass in parliament, where take away that power that was given to the city to be run, and without any constitutional challenge. I think it's grossly unconstitutional. Under President Kabah, President Kabah was a nice man, he was a good man, but that was the ill advice thing. The other thing when you mention about President Kabah, you say, I think he was part of a committee for look into the 1991 Constitution. Again, there is my problem. Because President Kabah was a lawyer, people just assume he qualified because he was a lawyer, he had worked in the UN, but these things don't necessarily qualify people in doing certain things in the law. Yeah, he may have been a licensed lawyer, well educated. I don't question President Kabah in level of education in any way, shape, or form. But when it comes to the Constitution, when it comes to the law, I would submit he was unqualified to head a committee, because I know of no evidence of President Kabah being a constitutional scholar, a constitutional lawyer, or a person who had even taken a class in constitutional law. So we get a bunch of people from Dr. Abdullahi Conte to all these folks who just keep meddling, S.J. Pratt, none of whom big name as they are, they were just not scholars in the field. You see, and this is not the thing where really then there was a thing about Justice Cowan. All these guys don't have the requisite qualification it took to meddle with the constitution. So we might as well face it. Let's deal with people that are very well educated. If we don't have them in Sierra Leone, let's look around so we can get a once and for all settled constitution. And then we for begin train lawyers them, we for know how to argue constitutional cases and train judges who should know how to interpret the constitution. So I just want to make them comment and they as we go along because we need to understand that the problem is immense, and it's not going to get any better. And some of them TSF, I think you mentioned the point that the president, in consultation with the electoral commissioner, can just do certain things. It shouldn't be that way. Because the other thing where I realize, say, one thing we would suffer from, what people need to know, it was this same vagueness in the law where Sir Henry Lightfoot Boston used for appoint Sir Albert Magai as Prime Minister of Sierra Leone, because there was a clause where say in consultation with or in his opinion. These are vagueness in the law. If any such clauses will be attacked for vagueness, So we need to begin to understand that when Lightfoot Boston, for those of you old enough, when he appointed Sir Albert Magai for succeed Sir Milton Magai, it was a shocker. No, but because Sir Milton Magai was not even the most, there were other ministers then, MS Mustafa, Tarifa Smart, and other people who were more senior in rank than Sir Albert. So Albert Magai was not even the one where we think say would succeed Sir Milton. But the Governor General say the Constitution gave and the power, say anyone in his opinion he can appoint. So we need to avoid them kind of laws than they, because these are some of the problems that we would run into in Australia. So let me go back to you, Mr. Mangot, sir. So just like I be saying, hold your thought. Let me see if you remember where you were, so we can take off from there.
No, I remember where I were, and I mean, Mr. Chilton, the problem is, it's not just the Constitution; it's the way we make laws. And I'll make it qualifying because I sure say we'll get callers now. Go say, to lawyer. Why you see, lawyers don't make the law. Lawyers are there to guide and interpret the law. The people who make the law are parliamentarians. And these parliamentarians, in making the law, they are guided by experts. And I can give you an example of, let me be parochial now and talk about transport. I just want to give you one law for sure you say, not to judge the Constitution. Yeah? When you take transport enforcement, right? In the 207 Act, only a police officer of the rank of inspector or above can issue a spot fine. Right? But you get a parallel agency, which is the SLRSA, where any rank can issue a spot fine. Then another thing, that same law, when they amended the Road Transport Act for regulation, when they bring the traffic cops inside, there's a clause in that act where say they get the same powers and privileges of the police. But if you look at further sections of that act, it clearly states they don't have power of arrest. So how do you mirror the two? One, you don't tell them, say they get the powers and privileges of the police. But then you tell them, saying that the same act, if they have any difficulty, they should call the police who should have power of arrest. So now the same tools to law. So when you make law, or you amend the law, and I make schedule at the back of the law. So the schedule will show you all existing law, where the law where they make, they affect or refer to existing law. And they know they teach parliamentary procedures and these things. Now make sure the British system is that you go through practical training and experience. So for instance, the clerk of the British Parliament is a public servant. And how do they recruit them? Because I worked in the clerk's department. But my role was as a committee specialist, which means I was there to give technical knowledge to the MPs when they're doing law, when they're reviewing and making law. The clerk of parliament, you come as a junior clerk, you cover all areas of parliament, the table office, where you table bills, you work in the Hansard office, where they take notes for proceedings of parliament, you work in the speaker's office, you work in the overseas office, you work foreign affairs office, you work in various other committees, ways and means committees, which is the permanent committee, So by the time you go through all that training, it will take you a period of 25 years before you are called the clerk of parliament. But we're in a situation now, the clerk of parliament is a public servant appointed by the president. So if that clerk is appointed by the president, is he loyal to the constituent, to parliament, or to the person who appointed? Because when we make appointment, they say it pleases the president. All the letters, it says it pleases the president. So if it displeases, you can be removed. These are some problems in our governance system. So not just the constitution. We Kenya by then, and the president of Kenya, who plays video, was deputy prime minister. Yeah, he was deputy prime minister. They had a coalition government to get things to what the Kenyans did for their constitutional amendment. They had experts in Kenya, but they have experts in constitutional law, seasoned people. So it was a combination of Kenyan knowledge, but experience. So they did a complete overhaul of the constitution. And then they went into referendum before they adopted the constitution. So that's careful doing a Salone. Because when they made the 1991 constitution, it was a reluctant constitution, moved from a one-party state to a multi-party state. So that's why you have certain clauses in the constitution, especially the ones dealing with supreme executive powers. Then for maintain the government at the time, the president in power, for make decision willy-nilly by executive orders. So it was a forged constitution. And we're talking about 91. So even when after the war, we had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, one of the recommendations in that report is that we should do a complete constitutional review. Picking like this now, they pick the death penalty or don't abolish the death penalty. That's cherry picking. You pick other parts and like you another one. We can talk about now. I know say some people they know glad with me. Now this new act where they go past the gender and empowerment bill, we don't become an act where they talk about 30% female representation. But if you're it's against certain clauses in the constitution.
I was going to say, you are so right. I think it's an unconstitutional law too.
Yeah. The constitution, it talk about equal rights. Yeah. It talk about no discrimination on grounds of gender. So in other words, if you're saying a tall weight, that means you're discriminating against men. Because we talk about equal rights, everybody has rights under the law. So you're not going to make a law for one section of the people, while you don't look at the other sections in the constitution which it goes against.
Well, this boils down to the fact that these people just don't know what they're doing. You see, you get a lot of bookmandem, but then things say the constitution na book sense. No, constitution na a matter of construction and a matter of specialization. So now it takes more than just being able to read and write English. You for be able to know what it means. And this is one of the problems we will get in the country. Now, along that line, then, Mr. Mangot, just for for buttress, what you to say, we don't use Kenya. I want for let we play the Kenyan constitution because we'll be the talk in terms of the weaponization of the police. The weaponization of the police and how they affect adversely the well-being of the country. But just to listen to the Kenyan president talking about the role of the police, I would ask the control room for playing for we. But before we go to that control room, let me take another call and see which in the caller get. Then we'll move on. Hello, caller. What's your name and which side you call from? Hello, caller.
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Salone. This is Abdul again. Sorry for the take-up.
Oh, yeah, Abdul.
Yeah, I just want to make an addendum, which I'm saying. But the constitution, the drafting constitution of Africa, it always is skewed towards the government in power. Just
but enough for
anonymous.
It should not be.
Yeah,
it should not be.
Because from my own study of African politics, the government in power, they select the members of the constitutional committee.
It should not be that way. Not be that way. This is not the problem.
So, one for this, not the constitution. And like for Sierra Leone constitution, like the 1991 constitution, we find out like Dr. Peter Soka, late Dr. Peter Soka, now be the head of the 1991 constitution. But again, you may get a constitutional expert amongst them. I don't know Peter Soka whether he's a constitutional expert. But,
I don't think he was. But if he was, please correct me. I don't think he was. This is what I keep complaining about. The title doctor shouldn't matter. Now all engineering and they make will come up with bad laws.
Dr. Abubakar Jabi is a constitutional expert. But as I say again, the government in power, when they select the committee, they dictate to the committee what they want for the constitution. You see, like the South African model, we come into being 1994 because they write the constitution in 1993 before they get an election. The South African model, they draft the constitution and make them into law for posterity. The Kenyan constitution, we come into being after the 2007 election debacle. They don't write them for posterity. They don't learn from the mistakes. They write them for posterity. So, beaucoup African states they make that mistake that they write constitution for posterity rather than they write them for suit the government of the day. This is one of the mistakes that the way most African states they do, and we self included. So unless and until we're ready to draft a constitution to serve posterity, then we'll be able to come out of all this debacle and this problem we will undergo soon. I just say for that caller, make that constitution. I stop so far.
Okay, Abdul, do me a favor. Whoever you think say not be expert, and when we say expert, I'm talking about someone who is a scholar or had taught constitutional law, had written treatises on constitutional law, or taking constitutional courses. So if you know of anybody willing to be part of any of them constitutional area, let me know, so I can try for read up on them people and try for find out if in fact they were the right party. But I refuse to just accept any Tom, Dick, and Harry because they get degree or because they go good school, the Oxford, the Cambridge. Because we're saying we get a parliamentary speaker, he get a PhD in law from Cambridge. Look how look the disarray where the parliament they does sit down, he arrogate or abdicate. Either he arrogates in power or he abdicates in power to the clerk. This is a Cambridge educated man. We can't let these guys get away with that, with them big degree. We have to hold their feet to the fire. They are doing a great disservice to the country. This is my point. You don't go and get these degrees just to go there and be messing around. Make a difference, for, like you say, for posterity. to whom much is given, much is expected. We expect much from these guys. The mediocrity should never be accepted from them, because don't come bluffing with Oxford degree, Yale degree, Harvard degree. Then you can't do anything worth a damn. I, for one, will not accept it. I will tell people that we should not tolerate that, because if that's the case, because now we're getting worse. We're getting a guy who is supposedly a road contractor getting ready for run for mayor of Freetown, who barely has any education. Now, I mean, we're racing to the bottom because we keep accepting all this foolishness when other African countries are progressing. You know, how can someone become a road contractor, go college, study engineering, but he's being given engineering contract in the millions of dollars, and now he wants to be, well, if after mayor, he may even want to run for president. So we can't just let these guys get away with this. We should start holding the Dr. Abbas Bundu them. We have to start holding the Dr. Abdullahi Conte them. These are the guys from whom much is expected. We should hold them to that level. Okay? That's the main argument down there. The African constitution for African countries should not be any different. It's about human beings. The basic concept of a constitution, governmental constitution, is to limit the powers of governments. It's to limit the powers of government. It's mostly a framework how for control the excesses of governmental power. That's what the constitution is all about, and we all for struggle, for try for make it work, not to for undermine them, like the two political parties that they do in Sierra Leone, as we see. So I will ask the control room to please play, because we always talk about the weaponization of the police. And this goes way back to Prime Minister Albert Magai, way past the act, the Libel Act for oppress and suppress opposition. That go to President Bio in credit. Now, it makes some time now seem to understand President Bio, because he gets some progressive laws the way they pass, the way he abolish that. But then you get with cyber, you can with the cyber thing, where we not necessarily need at this time in that sense there, just then they begin use them for hold down free speech, for arrest people them. So then it do away with the death penalty, which I think these are all progressive legislations them, but then you empower the police and the army for just come and shoot at peaceful protesters or even violent protesters, So I don't understand the contradictions. But then we listen to what we think say, because we decide with African countries there now, let's forget about America, Germany, France, England, Australia, which are much more advanced countries. Then we look like a country like Kenya, where the outpace where in such a distance we don't know when we will catch on. This was a country we used to train how to run a government. Listen to them president. And that to me is how a president should be talking. That should be the vision and a responsible statement from a president. So control room, please play the Kenyan president in comments about the police.
The police must not engage in matters politics. Don't take political sides. We have enough people to help us with our politics. We have political party operatives, we have activists, we have pressure groups, and all manner of people who can help us with politics. We want the police to be independent and to protect every citizen irrespective of their political affiliation. It doesn't matter. We want you to protect our brothers in the opposition the same way you protect those who are in government, because we are one people, we all pay tax, and your job is to secure the property and the lives of all the citizens of the Republic of Kenya. the government of Kenya will defend every public officer, every policeman who does his job well and who refuses to carry out illegal, unconstitutional orders. Yeah, this is a country of the rule of law. That's why we have laws. So protect, especially ordinary people, the small people, ordinary Kenyans. Protect those ones.
We must be respected. We are.
Okay, now, folks, you Unayeri, the Kenyan president. This man symbolized a lot of things. He's a PhD holder, and he talks like one. He's the president of a country. He talks like one. You know, because when you are head of a country, you ensure protection of the people and properties. And like again, the little people, the people that will not get power, will not get political power. So who will not be impressed with a president like that? But he not say that because he's saying that because Kenya has come a long way. They are striving to be better. But we keep undermining all the laws then. What would they make? One government come, it pass bad laws because they want to get advantage. Now President Bio, a lot of the laws the way they use, not the bad laws the way APC pass. Unfortunately, so even though I'm not going to give credit for that, because the laws are passed, if we repeal them, if we do something, let we know say it's serious. Let us come for make like we, for example, we an Eskoroma come with Falaba district. You know, I think that was a terrible thing. It was uncalled for. It wasn't necessary. Just forget political advantage. So what did President Bio himself do? When himself come, he messed with the census business. And the census clause should be written more stringently in the sense that they not forget no midterm census. It will just be once every 10 years, you know. But what would have been begin give the president some conditional power that if the president feel this, if he feel that. So what is that doing? All that has done is to allow the president for come up with this midterm census where now some people in the claim say unconstitutional. We can't keep that going. If we are serious, we need to take things seriously and not begin for the act like for say, because then Bukumaya and it cause too much problem in Sierra Leone. Too much problem, you know. For land book, for make matters easy for people them. But not to that, this book here though cause we so much problem that unless we do something with them Bukmaya, then almost reckless way of doing things, we will even get worse. So let me turn it over again to Mr. Mengot, make it just continue from where he was when I take a call. So Mr. Mengot, continue, sir.
Is there any caller or we proportional or we talk about the police?
Well, yeah, there's a caller. Because I could talk about the police, but let me see if I see indication that there is a caller. Just hold of one. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where's you call from?
Our name Eddie Bayo. I call from Australia, Sydney.
Okay, Mr. Bayo. Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Yeah, I want to give your view on this.
Go ahead. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Shillong try for, I think, say like condemn the one that would have drafted this Sierra Leone constitution, sort of, and he say let give names them of people them who are constitutional lawyers and let engage them on that. That's fine. I feel say we have Dr. Abdullah Okonte at FISA Good Day America, I'm sure. They're going to reach out to Ram. We get Francis Gabidon at Sierra Leone, Dr. Bubakar Jawi. If you're able to reach out to them and they let engage them on that side. Because really, the thing of these are the principles with the law of Sierra Leone without they work with up to this hour. So if you feel say things then they really were wrong, and Boku people they don't allow us to say it wrong. As the Sierra Leonean raise up your voice like I they do, let them try for amend their constitution. They will not put on constitutional review committee during our next time. We they spend hell of money on that thing. Which is the right, which is the right, which is they not the hand, and the government behind they sit all day. The Speaker of Parliament, we say a Cambridge man, not a constitutional lawyer. The law of Sierra Leone where it be day by 1991 constitution for say the speaker for being somebody where it don't go up to the rank of a judge in that country. By 2010 or whatsoever, they pull out all this for say the speaker will be somebody where you don't in a parliament, where you don't have parliament for 10 years. So whether you get law background or not, you qualify. So I think see, that issue is a day, now then they for try for review. Because first, the speaker therefore be somebody who don't act as a high court judge. You see? But now it will be any politician. So just to use that way this I don't know which mayor we don't kind of free town, really. We can on a background of really qualify for be a mayor or this if we get any criteria with the state. So anybody so far, if you say competent for being mayor of any region in that country, then it will be it is the constitution. So let not condemn gentle as businessman where they come or road mechanic, road engineer, and then now you want to be a mayor. Nothing not wrong for legend to be until they amend a law where you say first you will fit this criteria for being a mayor. So now me of you that are no more for pass.
Well, thank you very much for calling. Let I just make one or two. I appreciate what you say, and this now the spirit of this show. People are free for call, tell we how them feel, make their own contribution. We all not get for see eye to eye, but we like me, so me now one of me own concern about Sierra Leone, like the country. I have very little regard for both political parties because 61 years, both of them they have established record, they have done little or nothing. So me not to party operative, I know they talk na Sierra Leone and me, your own concern, that's all. So whatever I do is in good spirit, not with the purpose of condemning one party or the other. I am all in favor of talking about good laws, appointing competent people. That's the only way. Because, I mean, I common sense this. 61 years of independence, we haven't gone anywhere. All we don't do, we're in a backwards we go after all these years of independence. What are the contributors into that? Now the two political parties they would ever rule with. So love them or hate them. They operate above party politics because, like I say, I mean APC or SFPPO, these are not parties the way anybody will care about Sierra Leone. Now, if you care about parties, yeah, I mean you go push hard. But if you care about the country, I don't see how you go in good conscience agree with which in either one of them party had and do because both of them have done nothing but destroy that country there. So my thing is, now I make I bring people away, now expert, now I make I talk about this weaponization of the police. Naemek at the talk say start under Sir Albert, it get worse. Weaponization of the police start under Sir Albert, it get worse under APC, under Shaka Stevens, and it has not gotten any better. It's getting even worse. So let me just ask, when I just hear the gentleman who called just now, you just hear the Kenyan president in statement when he talk about the police, Konade will be the head, about the duty of the police. Police not for be an instrumentality of any political party, as we have in Sierra Leone. Under APC, the police then they support APC. Under SFPP, the police then they take orders from SFPP. So all these things, unless we stop them, we country not going to ever improve. Okay, so let me move to Mr. Mengot, and yes, sir, about give us some ideas about the police and the operation.
First
Your
of all,
expertise on.
I would like to share the experience in Kenya, because I was privileged to work in Kenya for over 7 years, and I was a World Bank consultant there. And the gentleman who just spoke, President William Ruto, I know him very well, because at the time I was there, he was Deputy Prime Minister. And that was the time when they had a coalition government after the skirmish of the 2007 election, when they lead to the constitutional referendum and amendment. Well, let me tell you the structure of the Kenyan police. The Kenyan police, you have 4 different police units. You have the regular police, what we call the boys in blue, when they deal with matters for citizens and everything. You have the administrative police. The administrative police came from the colonial side. These were the police guards, the police there where they serve the government offices at Siki, and sort of in between administrative police, like local government police and all those things. Then you get tourism police. The tourism police then have to deal with, because they know tourists is very important in Kenya, so they have a whole police division for dealing with tourists. Then, because Kenya is the only African country where you get 2 UN headquarters, UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program, and also UN Habitat. So there's a lot of Kenyan diplomats there, diplomats from all over the world, so they get a diplomatic police. So let me start first about how Kenya make them changes. Then I'll talk about the Sierra Leone police. Kenya make them changes after the referendum and the new constitution, we give the citizens right to decide on who hold key offices to deal with security and justice. Just like we'll talk about the constitution. Sierra Leone Constitution, Section 2, talks about citizens' rights, duties, and obligations. And it says sovereignty belongs to the people. And that sovereignty belongs to the people from whom the constitution and the government derives its powers. So if we start from that fundamental principle, we don't turn around because of the executive powers of president. So it means now the president and the executive can ride roughshod over the people. So when Kenya did their constitution, the Chief Justice, the head of anti-corruption, the Inspector General of Police, when they are being appointed, they interview them, and at times they even televise it. And they ask members of the public, just like where you get married, where you go, man and woman go married, where they say, if anybody know any just impediments why these two cannot be joined together, right now hold your peace. It's the same thing. When they are appointing the Inspector General of Police, it's televised. They ask citizens, if anybody gets any information for that person, they either been in a legal activity or impropriety, let them put that forward. And that is taken into consideration in appointing the Inspector General of Police. The same with the Chief Justice, the same with the Attorney General and those people. So in Kenya, what they've done, they've transferred power to the people because the people have a say and who make decisions and they agree. There are so many cases in Kenya where citizens they take government to court. even when it comes to elections dispute. Since 2007, when you have an election petition, they've got 3 to date, and it involved one person, Raila Odinga. The first was with the first time of Uhuru Kenyatta. They ruled against him. He kept quiet. He came back the second time. They ruled in his favor. But he didn't contest because he said the mechanism and the institutions, he not trust them. So that was his loss. But Kenyatta did his second term. The third was with William Ruto, who was actually his deputy prime minister, who now became vice president to Uhuru Kenyatta, and then contest against it. Ironically, Uhuru Kenyatta was supporting Raila Odinga. But then, so Raila went to court, he lost the case, he went and said quietly. That is why I give you the background to that remarks. That's why Ruto made that remarks, that police should not deal with politics. They should protect everybody equally. And that's where we need to go in our country. So now let's look at our own police in the country. What are the rules governing the police? This act. But in the Constitution, you get the police council. The police council now responsible for appointment of every police officer above the rank of assistant superintendent, right? And now look at the composition of the police council. The chairman of the police council is the vice president. Then you have the Minister of Internal Affairs. You have the Inspector General of Police. You have the Deputy Inspector General. You have the Chairman of the Public Service Commission, member of the Bar Association, and 2 other members appointed by the president. So when you look at it, it's all skewed in favor of the executive, right? Because the chairman, vice president is from the executive, right? So all the other people, Minister of Internal Affairs, he's a president's pleasure. Right? Appointed at the president's pleasure. So our police council not independent. And for justify that argument, we can take under this government the last 2 IG who was appointed, right? Rather than you look at the people who are competent and the actual the police council interview 1 or 2 candidates, because people who will be eligible for being Inspector General must have attained the rank of Assistant Inspector General of Police. In fact, we had a convention where it is not the rule, but it's a convention where the Deputy Inspector General of Police, upon retirement or being relieved of his duty of the IG, he becomes the Inspector General. We start from Acha Kamara, who was to the British man, Kit Biddle. When Biddle went, Acha Kamara became IG. After Acha Kamara, you get Munu. Munu was DIG. After Acha Kamara, Munu took over. Then after Munu, you have Richard Moigbe. He was DIG. When you're a DIG, you understand the IG, right? He took over from Munu. And then from Moigbe now, that's where it changed. You brought in Savula, who was not DIG. He was one of the several Assistant Inspector General of Police. And there are more senior people to him. Savula came in. We all know what happened during the Savula era, right? And when Savula was made Inspector General of Police, we had Madame Elizabeth Touré. I think she was DIG when they were making noise that we had the first female DIG and everything. But to bring in the new Inspector General for Aselu, that lady who was DIG was sent to the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and then Farah became IG. Yes, the president has that powers, and I'm not disputing that he was wrong in appointing them, because that's the Constitution give him that power. But it's the process through which they are appointed. The police council are then forced for scrutinize and make recommendation to the president. Not to the president for tell police council, say, now this man I make IG. And I just endorse them, then I can make an IG. That's the problem. In terms of, then under this new one, they're not extending in the rank of police. Yeah, you get more rank. Now you get assistant commissioner, you get commissioner, because before you move from an ASP, assistant superintendent of police, right? Then you go to superintendent, then you go to CSP, chief superintendent of police, then from CSP you go to AIG. But now you have assistant commissioner and commissioner in between chief superintendent and police to AIG, so they not stretch them. You see, so it's just a matter of the whole system being complicated. But let's look at the role of the police. In any force, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. The police is for force for good. I've worked with a lot of police officers who I can actually vouch for them. Senior police officer, that they uphold the law. But those people are the ones you don't hear about or see. But as long as we have a system, because this idea of instructions from above, that is our problem. And where does the instructions from above come? It comes from the executive power vested in the president. So you as a police officer, when you get instruction from above, right? What do? Do you ignore the instruction? If you ignore the instruction, it's at your own peril. We see recently where one of the spokesmen for the police, that's an example. During some recent news, when he went there and said something which the bosses didn't like, he was Media 1 by then, or Media 2. Then transfer in a very remote area. Just because he was not bowing to the tune. So with the police force, you have three principles. First, you have rule of engagement. How does the police engage with the bosses and the people they serve? Right? Then you get line of communication. Who do you take instructions from? Is the Inspector General of Police independent in making decisions? Or is it not to make his decision based on the letter where he gets, we say, it pleases the president to appoint him? If it pleases somebody to appoint him, if that person they instruct you for do something, you not do them, then it displeases that person. So what happened? You're out. So that's the issue we have to talk about. And then let's go back same to the police. Not only the weaponization of the police, but the politicization of the police. We see videos recently, right? When people were going to Hastings Police School, because the police, they were currently recruit 2,000 people. They were saying there, oh, we are party members, we're this, that, and all the rest of it. So your criteria for joining the police is because you're a party member or a party operative. So if you go with that attitude and you go through that door, when you become an officer, who are you? Who do you owe your allegiance to? Is it to the people of Salone for whom you take that oath to defend? Or is it to the party who give you a job? So these are the other things. Then, for instance, let's look at pay and remuneration of police. I know somebody who is an LUC. LUC means local unit commander, right? And the person is of the rank of, you have CSP, superintendent of police. You cannot believe that that person who heads a whole unit with 48 officers under their command, a monthly salary is not equivalent to $250 a month. Yeah? This is what the British say, if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. That person might be lucky to get those police in this police barracks, the few. But as an LUC, you not even get vehicle for the patrol. So if you don't equip the police officers, right, how do you want them to do your job? One thing people are not going to observe, because I go to Salone, those people you saw, the paramilitary arm of the police, the one they call Delta, you can see all of them. They had the brown boots. They are well equipped and everything. You cannot believe some ordinary police officer. They're not even supplying boots. You can buy your own shoes. So there's no uniformity. Even when it comes to their uniform. Police officer don't tell me, say, the material self within they use the uniform. If you want quality uniform, you can buy the material self. So how do you get people to uphold the law? Where one, the training you give them is not adequate for them to face. That is why we bring in what we call MACP, Military Assistant to Civilian Police. We saw it during the recent skirmishes. The military has no business with law. That's not their role. That's another unit we've actually missed. I was in Sierra Leone during the COVID time. You have Socia man at street where they check people for masks. Now Socia man business and then they get these new people where they don't bring when they get strangers. They were also checking for masks. So you get police checking for masks, military checking for masks, forest checking for masks, traffic warden checking for masks. What do you call that? So we have to look at our security forces, the men and women, how we train them. Recently, we had a press conference from the inside police training school. When they said they did a check, these are people supposed to uphold the law. They find them with illicit drugs, kush, cannabis sativa, and even weapons, which were not issued by the police. So what did the police do? They wanted to come out and sound good and said, oh, we are vigilant. We found these people. We've dismissed them. Charges. So it's like gamekeeper turned poacher. We also saw the issue of that who was videoed while taking kush, legless. We also saw a military officer with kush, and he have to you. Somebody can snatch that gun and use it for criminal offense. Yep. So we have to look at our security forces. How do we train them? Not just the police. What support do we give them? What respect do we give them? So if you equip the police, you train them, yeah, you devolve from control by the executive, then they can work in our interest. I think I must stop there. If we get any other people for comment, I've said as much as I can.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mangot. As a matter of fact, we are almost out of time, even to the point of not even taking any calls anymore, because the subject matter where you discuss is so good and so important and so captivating that I, for one, not even want you to stop talking, because we need that. You know, we need for people and for understand, for say, when they talk about country, not to this. I know say some people and get difficulty for separate the love for the party them. And what amazes me, these are parties, the evidence is clear. You know, not to say there's no evidence that these parties have done more harm than good. They've destroyed all institutions for which man are left with. But for some reason, people are in love with them. People don't see that. They just see who that they empower. That's all they are concerned about. But I can guarantee we people them, for particularly we were there abroad, and we will get hung up on tribalism and sectionalism. If we not begin to consider ourselves Australians and see ourselves as one, and make sure, say, what is good for the Western area is good for the South, is good for the East, is good for the North, if we begin to see ourselves as different people because we're different tribes, like Kenya, where they talk about, they get far more tribes than we do, and they are working so hard for get the uniformity where they need for move the country as one, and we are just busy tearing up any good things that we in past, and we are busy dismantling the authority of the courts. So when we get a court system where we cannot trust, we can't empower, we want to give executive president, like I said just now, a lot of the laws that we would complain about, now. Now APC passed them, where SFPP use because APC get this short-sightedness for say they would by hooks or crooks then go in a power forever. So we don't seem to have any regard for history. And I'm telling every peace or love in Sierra Leonean, if you love Sierra Leone, begin to look above and beyond APC and SFPP. And I'm specifying into party here, but when I did not destroy the country to the stage where they now. The smaller party, they don't want mentioning because they have done nothing. Okay? But these two parties, they record terrible. And I don't see why we're not for call it that way. But for some people, if they're sympathy with APC can do no wrong. When you get a person who become president, when he left power, he become a multi-millionaire. So people, they say there's nothing wrong with that because now APC man. When you get some people where you get, we see all the irregularities, like where this gentleman, they say, well, anybody get it right. I talk about the road engineering. If we want good roads, we'll forgive a contract for roads to qualify people. But if we want to forgive we uncle and we anti them for build roads because they're not Sierra Leonean, well, we'll get what you will pay for, So those are some of the things. If you want for get good doctor, you will try for hire somebody who will get qualification in medicine, or you can go to the village and go to an alpha and say, well, a good Moriman. So I need operation, it could do them for me. I mean, if we want to talk about rights, you can talk about that. But we for sure more love for the country is suffering. You never point anything, or you will barely point anything where which man left we. In 61 years, we're still there in a working condition. Some of them they don't vanish. Railway, forest industry, a lot of other things there. Salone Airways, you name it. Some of them major infrastructures will not get them anymore. Instead of we regret that, some people say nothing wrong with that if they didn't get the power. Well, our people are able to separate themselves as now we get power as opposed to the country where they affect them and the young picking them and grand picking them. I can't see it, but some people in the strain. But that said, many thanks to Mr. Mangot for all the information and the education we give. I certainly appreciate it, and I hope when I will listen, appreciate it. And many thanks to the callers them. Regardless of which your point of view, I will appreciate the fact that you even listen and you make your own contribution by calling. Like I say, the rules are, we no believe say we all foresee things the same way. We hope we all foresee things the right way. And we hope when we get the exchanges there, we will learn from each other. So until then, thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks to a guest, Mr. Mangot. And we hope you will come back, sir. We thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shillon. I appreciate this opportunity for being here. But also, I want to let people know, say, Voice of Sierra Leone, they host me every Saturday. And that one, I deal with my own professional area where I get passion for. We're in transportation, traffic law and engineering, and urban planning. I will not do 3 series on traffic law and road safety. So for now, the next series that we'll go do, now for deal with urban planning, land use urban planning, because we don't get a land commission. There are areas we don't talk about. The government say they don't get rid of that law we say, where you born in a colony, you not forget land, na customary law. Now they don't form a land commission where also most of we in the diaspora, we get problem. Where they go buy land, paper they not correct. Then they sell fake land give. We they get case in a court for over 8-10 years. So the next 3 series will focus on land matters, the land commission, land use planning, and building control. So I thank you all for listening. Stay tuned to Voice of Salone Network. Every Saturday, 6 p.m. Salone.
There you go.
And 1 p.m. US time. Listen to transportation and land use matters. Thank you.
Thank you so much.